Round 13 of Grand Prix Oklahoma City. I'm Ben Seck. This is Jacob Van Lunen, and we're going to play some Magic. Drew Iafrate versus Nathan Smith. Humans versus Dredge. It's turn one champion of the parish after playing a Cavern of Souls, presumably naming human.
Yeah, that is an ideal start here for Drew. Champion of the parish grows very, very fast when you're playing this human stack.
So, I mean, how much interaction is there going to be in this match? I mean, a lot of modern decks, they kind of play each other out, but do these decks interact well?
Yes, the humans deck interacts a lot with Dredge. They have Meddling Mage, they have Thalia, they have, Thalia Heretic Cathar in addition to that. They have, Reflector Mage, which can put cards back in Dredge's hand, which is not where they want those.
So Nathan actually just played Dark Blast on the Champion of the Parish. Really, actually pretty important. Great draw for him.
Yeah, now Nathan, something interesting about his Dredge list is that he's actually playing multiple copies of Dark Blast over some number of Golgari Thug. And, that's going to make his deck better in matchups like this. It's also going to allow him to get the dredging going nice and early.
Yep, so he actually replaces his draw with a Dark Blast Dredge, flipping over Narcomoeba, putting that one into play. Plays Cathartic Reunion, kind of discarding two Dredgers, and then also obviously uses those Dredge abilities to replace the Cathartic Reunion draws.
And now if he's able to hit another Dredger here, he can go again, but he does not, so he simply has to draw a card here. It's somewhat unlucky to not get a Dredger in that amount of cards. However, it seems like he does have another copy of Cathartic Reunion. Cathartic Reunion is so strong in this deck because you get to discard the cards before you draw. Mm-hmm. So if you have multiple Dredgers in your hand, you can put both of them in your graveyard and then dredge them back.
Okay, Drew with a Mantis Rider. Kind of a slow hand. I mean, he didn't have anything to play in turn two. This deck is nothing but creatures except for 4 Aether Vials, so, any turn that you don't actually deploy to the board seems not the most optimal.
Yeah, especially when it's a turn as early as turn 2. Leads me to believe that Drew's hand is many, many Mantis Riders, and we may see an air show.
Yeah, I mean, he has a few 3-drops, Reflector Mage, one Thalia Heretic Cathar, so... Yeah, it's possible that he just has a handful of that. Because pretty much everything else costs 1 or 2 mana. So we go back to Nathan's turn. Cast that Cathartic Reunion Jake talked about.
Finds himself a pair of Conflagrates, which are exceptionally strong in this matchup. And now he's going to get to dredge another 5 here because he found another Stinkweed Imp. Still has not found a Prized Amalgam, which is the big payoff for this deck.
Yeah, it's actually kind of unusual. I mean, he's gone through it's something about almost 20 cards there. No Prized Amalgams. He has hit at least 2 Blood Gas. Okay, so...
Yeah, now if he has another land here, then he would be able to play it. And, you have to remember that Bloodghast is a May ability, so it's possible that he does not want to return both of the Bloodghast, or all 3 of the Bloodghast, rather, because he may want to leave one in his graveyard to work with Prized Amalgam, because he only has 1 Narcomoeba left in his deck to trigger that.
Yeah. I mean, he does actually, I can see a Haunted Dead in his graveyard.
He flipped his Haunted Dead already. Okay.
Yeah, so he probably just leave it there. Gives him, as you say, another card that comes back from the graveyard. Finally flips a Prized Amalgam, amongst other things like another Stinkweed Imp, Dakmor Salvage, and Wooded Foothill. So he really has gotten going now. Drew really hasn't put too much pressure on him. I mean, Nathan's at 14, so he's got kind of plenty of time. More dredging happening here, getting the second Prized Amalgam. And obviously now he has to discard to his Faithless Looting. Discarding Golgari Thug and Stinkweed Imp. I mean, at this point it feels like Nathan's pretty close to, optimal here.
Yeah, and I mean, if Drew attacks here with the Mantis Rider, I would not be surprised if Nathan decided to triple block with the Narcomoeba. Well, maybe not anymore. I think now he's just going to chump.
Yep. It seems actually what Drew actually had on turn 2 was probably at least one Thalia Lieutenant, but he didn't want to play it on turn 2, basically because he wanted to save it to actually make other creatures bigger. So now he can't actually trade with the Mantis Rider. He just decides to chump with the Narcomoeba. Nathan's dredging a Life from the Loam.
Yeah, and the reason he's doing this, his plan, I believe this turn will be to cast Life from the Loam, return 3 lands to his hand, play a land, and then flash back a Conflagrate. So this will net him up 1 card even after he plays that land. And, then he can start using additional copies of Conflagrate in the future. But he's going to go ahead and attack with all of these Bloodghast first, and that will put some damage on these creatures if Drew decides to block at all, which will mean that Nathan needs to use less mana with the Conflagrate to clean up the other side of the table.
Yeah. Also putting them into the graveyard before Nathan hasn't played a land gives him something to return.
Yeah, which will trigger the Prize of Malcolms, of course.
So, Jake, I mean, I know you've played this deck on some Magic Online leagues. What's Nathan worried about now? I mean, the thing is, he's in fairly commanding position. Is there anything that can go wrong from this point?
I believe so. I think that it's definitely possible that Drew is able to play a Meddling Mage and then, play a Lieutenant and get to that critical mass of a board. The thing is that, the door is closing very quickly on Drew, and I think that, the game could end as quickly as the following turn. So while it's very unlikely that Drew can find his way back into this game, because, at this point Nathan's got full steam going, the Humans deck does have interaction. The Humans deck is a deck that can, mess with your plan. When the Humans deck's on the play, sometimes freebooters your Cathartic Reunion, that's your only, discard outlet. There are a lot of things that happen.
Yeah, it looks like Nathan's cast that Conflagrate, discarding his hand, clearing up the rest of Drew's board, and now I think off camera there are a bunch of Prize Amalgams that actually. Oh, actually no, sorry. Now they're coming into play. So there's going to be some Prize Amalgams that come into play.
And these trigger on your end step. Yep. So something that's important to know when you're playing the Dredge deck, if you're using the activated ability on a card like Insolent Neonite, you often want to do that at the end of your opponent's post-combat main phase, as opposed to waiting to their end step, because if you flip up Prized Amalgams in conjunction with Narcomoeba, then you're not going to be able to attack with them on the following turn, unless you do it during their post-combat main phase, because they'll come into play tapped.
So Nathan has 12 cards left in his deck. Is that a worry? Do you actually ever get close to decking with Dredge?
I haven't, and I haven't. It has not happened to me, and I've played probably almost 10 leagues with the deck. And by the way, I've won more with Dredge than any other deck. I also was playing it in the time period where everybody was winning with it, so I think it may have been before people started packing a little more hate for it. But
yeah, it seems like one of those decks that, if it is able to slip under the radar, that's when it's at its best, because there are a lot of powerful sideboard cards against it, right?
Absolutely, and a lot of those cards are beatable. I think that it's very possible to beat the first Relic. Mm-hmm. There are significantly more difficult cards to beat. Grafdigger's Cage is a nightmare. By the way, Drew has a few copies of Grafdigger's Cage in his sideboard, and to beat that card, you really need to have your answer to their hate in your opening hand, mm-hmm. because it's really hard to top deck hate when you're playing a deck like Dredge, because you just want to be using the Dredge effect, and you can use Faithless Lootings and whatnot to look for those answers, but then you don't have them for actually going off.
Yeah, I mean, obviously other cards like Rest in Peace, Leyline of the Void, obviously cards that people play, but game one, people generally aren't playing those cards, so you generally you really, really want to win game one, don't you?
Yeah, game one is very good for you in the vast majority of your matchups, and the other games aren't that bad either.
So Drew's casting his Life from the Loam, presumably to get 3 land, but give him some fodder for his Conflagrates.
Go on. I'm sorry. A cool interaction that's going to happen here, by the way, is if a prized amalgam enters the battlefields. So he's not using their conflagrate. Never mind. What I was going to say was a prized amalgam can trigger a different prized amalgam.
Oh.
They can set up a chain. Because one will come into play on your end step, and then the other one will get triggered to come into play on the opponent's end step.
Okay, so Drew casts a Mayor of Averbuck. Really has to say on the defense because he's only at 5, and it's just only a couple cards that will actually.
Yeah, and the thing is Drew doesn't have a meddling mage in hand, so he knows that even if he's able to stave off this entire attack, like if he had a cryptic command or an anger of the gods, it wouldn't have mattered because Nathan would have used life from the loam, returned 3 lands to his hand, could have just killed him with conflagrate. So without a meddling mage to deal with conflagrate, Drew really just does not have what he needs.
Okay, we're going to just have a look over in this backup game, and so we have Julian John playing his mono green Tron deck versus the Scape Shift deck. So both of these land-based decks, some of them, which is the faster one? Which is the one that actually you're worried about getting ahead?
So the Tron deck is certainly faster to do its broken things. The Scape Shift deck, it seems like this is a just red-green Scape Shift deck, so they can't interact as much as they might like to. Post-board, the nice thing about a red-green Scape Shift deck is that they do get access to quite a bit of land destruction. And especially when you're on the play, land destruction can be incredible against these Tron decks.
Yeah, and obviously Julian's kind of set up a huge army here with an Ulamog and Emrakul. I don't know where the other Eldrazi Titan is. He or she is nowhere to be seen, but I don't think you need to have 3 Titans to win the game.
And Julian's at 27 too, so Adam would need. I guess he would need 8 lands in play.
Yeah,
in order to kill Julian, as opposed to 7.
Okay, so we're back to the main match, and obviously Dredge won the important first game. Like, it really has to because the sideboard cards are so good. But when you're playing Dredge, you have a lot of different sideboard cards, but how do you predict, what's, because some of them are enchantments, like Rest in Peace and Leyline, and some of them are like artifacts, like Grafdigger's Cage. How do you decide how much you put in? You may actually choose the wrong one. So is there a way of figuring that out?
Yeah, so when you're sideboarding with Dredge, it's extremely important that you basically never sideboard more than 4 cards that do not read Dredge on them or read discard a card on them. You need to keep your number of discard outlets at a certain number, you need to keep your number of dredgers at a certain number, and you need to keep a certain amount of payoff. In a matchup like this, I imagine Nathan's going to take out 1 Bloodghast, I would imagine. And the cards he's going to want to bring in, it's interesting because Thoughtseize is a card that you sometimes bring in as, your catch-all. You take their piece of hate before they play it. But when your opponent's on the play, a lot of the hate costs 1, so you don't really want to be doing that blind. Abrupt Decay is usually the blind hate answer that you bring in. So you'll bring in 2 copies of Abrupt Decay, sometimes 3, depending on your list. And you just have to trim. So I imagine he's going to take out 1 Bloodghast, Bloodghast being at its best against decks that play a lot of spot removal, and at its worst against aggressive strategies where you need to be, fighting that game. We could also see Nathan Spith bring in a pair of Lightning Axes, and Lightning Axes also serve as discard outlets, so you can sideboard those for a pair of Insolent Neonites, and not disrupt what your deck does to too great a degree. He also has Dark Blast, which he's going to be bringing in, and he can just bring that in over a Thug or something, and that way he's not. One of the major problems that people have when they're playing Dredge is that they over-sideboard. Or in sideboarding, they make their deck not do what it does. And you need to mulligan very aggressively to Dredge. It mulligans better than just about any other deck in the format. It's just...
Yep. So Drew leads off with a Noble Hierarch. He actually has some interesting sideboards too. He has, in addition to the Grafdigger's Cage we've talked about, he actually has an Anafenza the Foremost, which is obviously very, very good against, some turns against Dredge, and I think he may decide to bring in, is it Staticaster? What do you think about that one?
Yeah, Staticaster is very reasonable. It's a good way to prevent yourself from being pressured by Narcomoebas and or Bloodghast. It, when you draw your Staticaster, the major problem you need to deal with is just Prized Amalgam, and then you often force your opponent to conflagrate the turn after it's in play, but it already gets at least one, if not two, activations because you're casting on your opponent's end step a lot of the time.
So Drew on turn 3 cast Mantis Rider. I mean, both games he's declined to play a card on turn 2, so that's not so great for the humans deck because we've seen earlier this weekend it has some explosive starts, especially when it gets the Vial into play. Though I suspect he may actually not. He might have boarded out the Vials in this matchup because you really don't want to remove too many creatures. Nathan playing a Stinkweed Imp on defense.
And I like this from Nathan. I mean, he has Lightning Axe in hand already, but he has 2 Conflagrates in his graveyard, so in some ways a card like Meddling Mage could really punish him. A card like, So in this way, he gets a Dredger in the yard. He's able to deal with, one of Drew's 3-mana threats by playing a 3-mana threat of his own. And here we see the power level of Stinkweed Imp when you just keep dredging it and casting it, which is oftentimes good enough against creature-based decks that are not playing cards like Lingering Souls.
Yeah, so Nathan obviously dredges his Stinkweed Imp, only really flipping over a Narcomoeba of relevant cards.
I mean, that's fine when you're just dredging 5 cards. And, he does have this Faithless Looting in his graveyard now. The only Dredger that's in his yard is the Dackmore Salvage.
That's right.
So he's probably going to want to wait till he has another Dredger in the yard. Flashing back looting without, something like a Thug or a Stinkweed Imp already in your yard is usually incorrect.
Yeah. So one of the things about Faithless Looting that's a little bit different to some of the traditional rummage effects is that you actually draw the cards first and then discard them. So it's not quite as good actually in Dredge, even though usually that ability is better.
Yes, that's definitely correct. I mean, it's an unbelievably powerful card, though. I mean, Careful Study was already insane, and now it has flashback.
Okay, so Drew's followed up his 2 Mantis Riders with a Meddling Mage and another Noble Hierarch. We'll find out exactly what Meddling Mage is naming.
I'd wager dollars to donuts that it is Conflagrate.
Oh, so Nathan's doing a little trick that a lot of Dredge players will know.
Yes,
I think he played his Dark Blast in his upkeep.
Yeah, and this allows him to dredge the Dark Blast, which gives him an effective Dredger, and it also will allow him to use that Dark Blast after his draw step, so he's going to get to cast it twice on the Meddling Mage, thus killing it. In addition to that, he's also going to then have 2 big Dredgers in his yard to make this Faceless Looting on the following turn more powerful than it would be otherwise.
As predicted, the Dark Blast hits the Meddling Mage for the second time. But he's leaving, passing there. Looks like Drew drew another Mantis Rider. He's drawn 3 this game. It's kind of important in some ways because it's one of the ways of getting through, but Nathan really actually has a lot of pretty good flying blockers.
He does, and that's the thing about Dredge that's good against these creature decks. When you get into racing situations, Narcomoebas are really, really good at jumping, and you kind of just drop them into play for free. So,
okay. Drew's forced to basically pass because of the Stinkweed Imp on the other side of the board. That's a good dredge for Nathan. Flipping over another Dark Blast, Stinkweed Imp, and a Life from the Loam.
Yeah, and the Life from the Loam is extremely important for Nathan because he has those 2 Conflagrates in his graveyard, and those get a lot more powerful when you start loaming.
Another dredge of a Stinkweed Imp.
Yeah, and that finds a Prized Amalgam, an important card.
At this point, it feels like the hate cards aren't going to be good enough now. Do you think a Graph Digger's Cage at this point is going to be impactful enough?
I do. I think that what Drew has access to at this point, I think he will eventually be able to beat the endless stream of dredging Stinkweed Imp and casting Stinkweed Imp if he's able to find Grafdigger's Cage specifically. But that's only if Nathan's, following Dredge does not work out well.
Okay.
So if a prized amalgam is in play at the end of the next turn, I think we can say that Nathan Smith is in a position where it's close to impossible to lose. And if it's not, he's still in a very commanding position.
Drew kind of representing the humans of the world against the zombies, and it looks like it's possible that the world is going to get overrun by the undead menace.
So, Nathan counting his library there, perhaps going for a Life from the Loam, and then going to make a big conflagrate.
Okay. It looks like Drew has no cards in hand. I'm not sure if he has no or one card in hand, but I think his kind of body language is almost looks like he's resigned to his fate here.
Yeah. He's watching on.
He really has had two kind of pretty mediocre draws. I mean, 6 land is a lot for this deck.
It is, very much so. I mean, I believe the deck doesn't even play 20 lands.
Yeah, no, it's 19 lands. So,
yeah,
drawing 6 of those 19, you really just need to draw a little bit more action. They only really want to draw about 3 lands maximum, especially with Hierarch. Okay, flashing back.
Yeah, so Drew not even going to use his conflagrates here. Instead, simply dredging more with Faithless Looting.
Okay, almost got everything here. Now, hitting him on Narcomoeba means that those prize amalgams will come back at end of turn. Really kind of, stopping any hope of a comeback from Drew.
Yeah, and here Nathan not even discarding Stinkweed Imps, just discarding a Thug and a land, and he's doing that because the Stinkweed Imps actually match up very well against the Mantis Riders in case Drew does something that removes his graveyard from the game. But we know that Drew doesn't have any cards like that.
Yep.
And Nathan actually has played this game really well. Even if Drew had drawn differently, drawn a more powerful hand, Nathan still has, I believe, multiple Lightning Axes in hand.
It really just has everything covered. I mean, so now Drew's drawn his actual final Mantis Rider. Usually, one of the better threats he has in his deck, but just not going to be good enough. I mean, there's all the Narcomoebas are in play. There's a Stinkweed Imp as well. Nathan's just going to be able to just block everything, kill 2 of them.
Yep.
Leaving Drew with really just a sole threat. And Nathan with an entirely full hand. So that Conflagrate's likely to clean up a lot of the rest of the board here on Drew's side.
Yeah, so Life from the Loam going to get cast here after it's dredged. And I think could go for Conflagrate here. He could also just cast Stinkweed up after loaming again. I'm not sure if that would leave him with more than 7 cards. If it would, then I imagine his line is just going to be to Conflagrate.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's 9 cards or 8 or 9 cards in hand, so he only needs 4 to clear the board, and then he can do 5 to Drew's face.
Yeah, he's probably going to want to leave himself with at least an axe in hand.
Let's see if he agrees with you. Yeah, it looks like he's only discarding as much to kill the creatures in play.
Yeah, and I mean, he still has more Conflagrates too, so he could, always use them later when he needs to.
Drew attacking for 6. Finally doing First Blood. Sorry, Nathan attacking for 6. Doing First Blood on Drew, bringing him to 14.
Yeah, and the one argument for sending it at Drew's face with a lot of other damage is that you get to have a hasty Bloodcast on this turn if you're willing to go hard enough, but...
Yeah, so the Freebooter...
That's it.
And
yeah.
Drew, just
take a look at that hand. There's no way you're ever winning.
And he saw most of the hand. So actually, Nathan wins 2-0, moving to 11-2 and keeping his hopes alive for the top 8. I think Drew is out of the running now, moving to 10-3. Now we go back to our backup match, Julian John versus Adam Pannone. Julian won the first one. I think we saw that all those Eldrazi Titans took it home for him last game. But this one looks much, much more in Adam's favor. I mean, he has a Primeval Titan in play. At least one Valakut. No, two, I think. These are 2 Valakuts there. One of them's an alternate art.
Yeah, and this could make for a lethal attack.
Yeah, I mean, he has the 5 mountains required, or might get them. Yes, he has the 5. So pretty much the attack will do 12 damage in of itself, just like, if you just want to send it to your opponent. Okay, Julian is sacrificing his expedition map, presumably to either get Tron. Yes. The final piece, the Urza power plant.
Adam being extra careful here to pay for that Summoner's Pact. I like this. He set aside the lands that he needs to cast it. He put something on the top of his deck. Julian taking one of the lands out from underneath the lands that Adam set aside.
Just checking. Really.
Classic.
No, I don't really.
We see you. No, I'm joking.
I mean, it's just like when your opponent has a Primeval Titan and, and 2 Valakuts in play.
Yeah, you want to read it. I understand. I'm joking.
No, I mean, like, you got to take every angle, like every edge you can get, because it looks like, he may not have any other way. Yeah, so he plays Karn, removing the Primeval Titan. So he's still in it. I mean,
yeah.
Every mountain that comes into play is going to be 6 damage. So he just needs a mountain to actually kill the Karn.
I mean, Adam could just have Escape Shift and 36 Julian though this turn.
Yep. So it looks like he just has land in hand, but one of them is a Valakut, and he has a fetched land, so he has an option of getting, a mountain, presuming there's another non-basic mountain in his deck still.
Yeah, so he's going to go in and get a mountain. This is going to allow him to do 3 damage to the Karn, getting the Karn off the table, and also allow him to deal 3 damage to Julian, which will put Julian at 17. And that means once he gets that other Valakut in play, it's only 2 mountains until Julian's dead. Yeah, but it looks like Julian does actually have, some time, because there's only only a Valakut in hand for Adam, and I think maybe a forest. It's possible it's another fish land, but in any case, I think it's just land there, which means that unless he actually draws something, yeah, I mean, Julian's going to have another turn here. Can't Thoughtseize the top of the deck.
Oh, World Breaker. Very, very likely to be going for the Valakut.
Yeah, now, at this stage of the game, it's not... It's relevant if Adam top decks another copy of Primeval Titan. However, if Adam were to draw Scape Shift, it just doesn't really make that much of a difference.
Yep. But I think almost the more concerning thing for Adam is that the World Breaker actually triggered the Sanctum of Ugin,
which got an Ulamog.
Yes. So, and presumably, I mean, he has 8 mana in play, so he only needs one of the Urza lands to actually be able to play Ugin next turn. And that may be enough to actually just pull it into Julian's favor. So he has one turn to... Adam has one turn to try and make sure that he doesn't lose grip of this game.
An aggressive Walking Ballista for 1.
I think Julian has a few threats in his hand, knows that he can't cast them all, so...
Adam's definitely drawing Escape Shift this turn. That's how it goes.
No, it looks like he drew a Stomping Ground, so it's...
Man, what are the odds?
It's pretty rough. I think he actually has both other Valakuts in his hand.
Which is odd, because you do want to some degree, protect them.
Yep.
Because you probably want to play one right before you go off, because if you have two of them in play, then increases the power level of the Ulamog that is in Julian John's hand by a lot.
So Adam actually declines to play his Valakut, presumably because he wants to protect against the Ulamog that is in Julian's hand. So it seems like his only real out now is to play the Valakut next turn, hope to draw a Scape Shift. Probably a Primeval Tide not good enough because he actually has all the Valakuts either in the graveyard or is in his hand. So isn't able to do that much damage there. Thought Not Seer from Julian.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Adam's like making sure that it can't get land. It's like, I don't have anything you can get. 2 Valakuts revealed by Adam, and so Thought Not Seer is, strictly worse. Now he can actually kill it, get a card back.
I doubt he will.
Yeah. So obviously Julian didn't have the extra Tron land. Oh, actually, he plays an Ancient Grudge from the graveyard.
So it makes more sense that he played the Walking Ballista for 1 then. There's a Grudge in Adam's graveyard.
I think they're just trying to think if I think there might be a small judge call, or they're just figuring out something about the communication in the game.
Everything seems above board at this point.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything too serious. I think it's probably something to do with the Ancient Grudge and whether he cast it before or damage or not. Or it's possible that it didn't get sacrificed. I don't know. It's probably something simple. Yeah. Looks like it was resolved. Doesn't look like there's any problem. No harm, no foul. It really needs a Scape Shift for Adam. What is it? It looks like a wooded foothills, which is not going to be enough. That being said, he actually is only being pressured by 9 points, so he may have another turn here.
Yeah, unfortunately for him, another land means Ulamog's coming down. But it's basically a 1-turn clock anyway, and I think he would still be able to kill his opponent if his opponent Ulamog 2 of his lands away.
Yeah, so he can't cast Ulamog now.
Card.
Because he played that Chromatic Star. Oh, hold on. That is only 9 mana. He actually needed another tower to make up 10 for the Ulamog. So it's possible that Adam is actually going to get an extra turn. And I'm not even sure, actually, even if you draw Scape Shift, if it's enough. It's possible that there might not be enough mountains. Oh, no, it's probably only 5. It's probably okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's with the with Julian only being at 14.
Oh, he still has like one more Valakut too. Oh, Ugin. Oh, he's just 1 life off. What that means is that Wood of Foothills cannot search for a mountain because Adam is on 1. Is that a Scape Shift? That might be a Scape Shift.
Maybe a Summoner's Pact or a Scape Shift. They do have similar art.
Okay.
Let's see if it had a mana cost.
Oh, no, I think it is a Scape Shift.
It is a Scape Shift.
What a top deck here. So,
oh, man.
This could be the
maximum drama turn to draw it. I appreciate that. Thank you, Adam's deck.
So he has 2 Valakuts. So I think this is actually lethal, provided that he didn't run out of mountains. And, Adam sits up in his chair, lines up the land to Scape Shift. Now he just has to, he's counting all of his land because he wants to make sure that he doesn't miscount. And I think, look, he only needs to get 3 lands. No, 2 lands is 12. Yeah, 3 lands is 18. So he needs 3 mountains to be searched off. And I'm pretty sure that he's going to have 3 mountains.
Yes.
Just an amazing draw by Adam, just the last possible turn. I mean, granted, he did draw a lot of land coming up to this turn.
Yeah, I mean, his draw has not been incredible by any means. I mean, he had a bunch of turns to draw the Scape Shift. It's certainly the way he drew it up.
Just needs one more. 3. Now it's overkill. He's just making sure that his opponent knows that he had him pretty well covered.
Yeah. I will target you.
36 damage. He could even kill like Ugin or something like that, just as an extra one. So Adam able to square the match at 1-1. You know, a little bit like a combination of lucky and unlucky. He, had a stretch of draws that, weren't impactful. Made it feel like Julian might have come back into the game. And actually, Julian was kind of unlucky not to get the land to be able to play the Ulamog either.
Yeah.
So,
razor thin.
Yep.
But for what it's worth, I think Ulamog would not have been good enough.
Yeah, no, it's likely because he still had a Valakut in hand. As we saw, I think he had 6 mountains, so he actually needed 6 mountains to cover the 14 life. Mm-hmm. He needed 5 mountains to cover the 14 life of...
with the Valakut that he had.
Yeah, with Julian. So I think, the Ulamog probably didn't do it. Though if the Ulamog came into play, he probably would have had one less turn too.
Julian John Tron.
That's probably why he's playing Tron.
Yeah. He's a big fan of rhyming.
Okay. I'm just...
Yeah, it seems that they are... one of the players needed a quick break. Wait. So what do you think of Scape Shift in this modern metagame?
The funny thing is I think Scape Shift might... I'm trying to think, is it good against Tron? It actually is pretty good against a lot of the discard Thoughtseize decks. I think
it is. It's quite good against them. And, again, you said it yesterday. I think I said it again today. It's a good and old adage, an oldie but goodie. You cannot Thoughtseize top of their deck.
Yeah.
And, we've seen that quite a bit over the years where when playing in Modern or any format where people are scape shifting, their opponent picks apart their whole hand. They're left just like playing lands. They've got 7 or 8 lands in play. They draw scape shift, they win the game. And that's a really powerful thing to have. Like have a 1-card combo that actually just wins you the game by itself. Against a deck like Tron, they do more powerful things earlier than you. But it's not necessarily clear to me that they can close the game or start tearing apart your land base effectively before you get to the point where your scape shift is lethal. And not a ton of these Tron decks are playing target discard in the form of Thoughtseize. Some of them are, but most of them aren't. And otherwise, the way they're trying to interact with these scape shift decks is with lands, cards like Ghost Quarter, that actually slow them down. So they need to, establish their chain of threats and then follow up with Ghost Quarters. Yeah,
the thing about Scape Shift too, it also can play a fairly normal game. I mean, it can ramp into a Titan, probably turn 4, and it has not only 4 Titans, it has Summoner's Pact as well to get it. So it in some ways it has a fair game that is very powerful and doesn't, have to have the explosive combo-ness of Scape Shift. And a lot of times a combo deck that can actually play, a normal game as well is really important because, that means all the sideboard cards that come in don't automatically hit you out. Like a deck like Dredge, it's fairly one-minded about how it approaches the game.
Absolutely.
Whereas Scape Shift has a few gears to play with.
Yeah, I think that's very true in Modern right now. I think the majority of successful combo strategies that are being played right now in Modern have alternate win conditions that win at least 50% of their games for them.
Yep.
You look at these blue-red and or Jeskai now, I suppose, through the Breach combo decks, and those decks a lot of the time are simply winning by Snapcaster Mage and Lightning Bolt. You look at the Splinter Twin decks. They're just attacking people with Pestermites. They're attacking people with Snapcaster Mages in much the same way. They don't necessarily need to cast Kiki Jiki and make, a billion Deceiver Exarchs or Pestermites in order to kill their opponent. they can just do it the old-fashioned way. But the threat of that automatic win in their deck, it warps the way their opponent is going to play post-sideboarded games. It morphs the way they're going to have their deck configured. It's a really powerful, test to give your opponent. And players who are not necessarily familiar with your overall game plan could overcompensate and or undercompensate, and if they do so, they end up in a really bad situation.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think I see in a lot of modern matches is players over sideboarding. I mean, this is a trap that you've got to be really careful about it. Like, most people actually sideboard for the game one they just played, rather than what the game is going to be in the post-sideboarded games. And in some ways, Modern is defined by its powerful sideboard cards. So how do you know how hard to change your deck?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's also quite deck dependent how much you're going to change your deck, because, there are some decks that are well-oiled machines. Decks where, every card you draw is a different cog in the machine. And you cannot sideboard more than a few cards in decks like that, especially if those cards are reactive, because you're going to end up with a deck that is severely diluted, and you may have some number of draws that don't do anything at all.
Yeah, no, it's just I've just seen so many times like cards stranded in people's hand because it's like, oh, you didn't kill me the way I expected you to kill me. Okay, the players are shuffling for their final game of round 13 for them. Both these players are 11-1, so they have a loss to give to make top 8 or at least be in the running for it. And then obviously all players at 13-2 actually qualify for the Pro Tour. And I think the Pro Tour this one qualifies for is a Modern Pro Tour. Rivals of Ixalan.
Yeah, so I'm sure a player who goes deep in this tournament is going to be really, really excited about getting to play in a Modern Pro Tour. Stands to reason that we'll have some number of Modern Masters standing at the end of today.
Julian not happy with his 7, going to 6. Looks like Adam has a pretty good mix of land and spells. I did see a Scape shift there. I'm wondering if he actually has Search for Tomorrow. So tomorrow is really, really important.
Very much so. I mean, it is your turn 1 play. And, if you're able to have that on turn 1, then you can get the ramping going much faster. And that's super important against a deck like Tron. Something that's important about Tron also, though, is that, we talked about how bad Storm mulliganed earlier today. We talked about Dredge mulliganing quite well, but needing to find very specific things in order to have a truly keepable hand. Mono Green Tron also mulligans quite well. I mean, this is a deck where, you see people win games on mulligans to 4 with this deck. And it's not like that happens occasionally. Like, that happens all the time. And it's so gross. They just, play 3 lands and then play a Karn. They still have cards in their hand, and they mulligan to 4.
So Scapeshift used to play Prismatic Omen a lot, and I've seen that kind of fall out of favor a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Prismatic Omen in many ways is kind of a rampant growth effect in terms of how quickly you're able to go off. With Primal, it makes the Primal Titan lethal very, very fast because you can, search for a pair of Valcuts, and both of them count as mountains. So then you end up, doing 6 apiece with them if you didn't have a Valcut already in play, and if you have a Valcut already in play, you're doing 9 apiece off of them. So I do like Prismatic Omen as at least a one-of, because I think the first copy of Prismatic Omen is, perhaps better in some of these red-green versions that don't play, 4-drops than some other random rampant growth effect. But, it's certainly not quite as good as a card like Secure Tribe Elder.
Yeah.
It's close, though. It's close. It really is close.
Okay, so Julian John used his Expedition map. I think he went for his tower. It looks like that would be the one he was after. I think both players are trying to save a little bit of time because there's only just over 5 minutes left in the round by searching simultaneously. But, Julian's mulligan seems to be relatively optimal, at least so far, having Tron on turn 3. So as long as he has one of his threats that costs 7 or less, so either a Karn,
Worm Coil,
he'll be able to deploy it next turn.
Take up to 5 extra turns to complete your match.
Let's see. What was found here by Adam? Lots of foil alternate art cards this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes hard to figure out.
I mean, I think modern players are particularly kind of proud of their modern decks, and so you can see a lot of, really, really shiny or alternate art or foreign cards at a modern tournament, especially like a Grand Prix. And I mean, one of the good things about modern is you can get a deck and you can keep it, you can play it. I mean, most of these decks have existed for a few seasons at least.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a deck, you can learn it inside and out, and then you can know that you're going to be playing optimally with a very powerful strategy. The other thing that's fun is that you can kind of do a little bit of like a personality signal with your deck. Like the deck that you choose to play, if you're a single deck type person in Modern, that says something about you, and that's cool.
Okay, so Julian John actually plays Karn right on time, forcing Adam to discard a card from his hand. I mean, what do you think about going for the hand rather than trying to Stone Rain Adam by going for one of his land? Now he doesn't have a Valakut in play, so he doesn't have an easy target there. But also, I mean, is Karn in danger of dying if he goes down?
I don't think it's particularly in danger. Of course, he could be afraid of a card like Lightning Bolt. There's very little cost for him to play around it. I don't think that Adam can do much on this turn that'll prevent Julian from simply Stone Raining on the following turn. I do think that Julian's going to switch gears with what he's doing with that Karn and take it down on the next turn and even the turn after if given the opportunity to.
Yeah. Now it's really tough for Adam to actually play out his Valakut because he knows it's almost guaranteed going to be swallowed by Karn. Also, it's a coming to play tap land, which is not something he needs right now. He probably needs to find some way to ramp out of this Karn, who's likely to tick down twice
in the following 2 turns. I agree.
So might just try and keep him off getting to at least the minimum amount of mana for a card like Primeval Titan.
Yeah, and I mean it's important to note. I think Adam does have a copy of Scape Shift in hand, and because the Tron deck doesn't take damage from their lands, this actually weakens the Scape Shift combo a bit because Scape Shift combo usually only needs 7 lands in play for it to be able to be cast to deal 18 damage, which is usually lethal. But against this Tron deck, the 18 damage usually is not good enough, and you end up having to find another 2 points or have 8 lands in play when you cast your Scape Shift.
Okay, so Adam actually cast one of the cards that actually allows him to get out of the Karn lock. It's a Beast Within. So basically this card destroys a target permanent, but they get a 3/3, which I think for Adam, he's more than glad to make that trade.
Absolutely. And, in doing so, he's also protecting his mana base from the, chain of Stone Rains that Karn would rain down upon him.
I think in hindsight now, Julian might have wanted to Stone Rain. Just because...
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So Julian plays a Chromatic Sphere, then into an Ancient Stirrings, and with the Ancient Stirring finds a Thought-Knot Seer.
Thought-Knot Seer is quite good.
Yep. It's definitely a good threat. Plays another Sphere and sacrifices it. I wonder if he's looking for another land so he can actually play... Okay, so he plays Thought-Knot Seer with the remaining mana. Adam doesn't look too happy about the situation. So there's a Scape Shift, 2 Valakuts, a Sakura Tribuilder, and so obviously he's taking the Scape Shift. I've never seen that Sakura Tribuilder. It is a pretty cool looking card.
It's an FNM promo. It's a somewhat recent FNM promo even.
Okay, so Julian plays his second tower, giving me access to 3 mana. Playing another star. And basically cashing it straight away. He doesn't... Not too worried about needing the green in following turns.
That was a great turn there for Julian. I mean, now Adam doesn't have the requisite Scape shift that he needed to combo off in hand anymore. Suddenly he's under a ton of pressure. This is a 3-turn clock. Adam, now back against the wall. He needs to find himself a Scape shift, and he needs to hit land drops. So he's got the lands he needs for the Scape shift to win in the game, but he really needs to find that and/or a Primeval Titan now.
One of the benefits of actually the situation is those 2 Secure Tribe Elders will actually block and be able to be sacrificed, effectively fogging Julian for 1 turn. So, it looks like with 7 power on table and probably a few other cards coming from Julian, he may have 2 turns, maybe 3 turns if he's lucky to actually draw a Scape shift.
Yeah, and I mean, there's certainly other things that come out from Julian here that could affect, that number. But, it's one of the things that's always great about Secure Tribe Elder is just the fact that, it does exactly what it does. It's a fog in addition to a random growth.
It's possible that Adam only has 1 turn to draw a Scape shift, and maybe none.
Yes.
Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger comes into play. Looks like he's likely to swallow 2 lands, one of which is almost certainly going to be a Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle. And Julian John is in full Stone Rain mode because now he uses his Sanctum of Ugin to search for another Ulamog, presumably to just knock Adam even further behind the next turn.
And Adam's deck needs lands in play to operate well, and Ulamog exiling 2 lands is just about his worst nightmare here.
Yeah. And on top of it all, it's possible that Ulamog, when it attacks,
it could just make Adam's deck do
not enough damage.
Close to nothing. Yeah, because if you exile enough mountains, then the Scape shift is no longer able to beat people. If you exile the rest of his Valakuts, then he can't win that way. And it's much more relevant, the trigger, in this matchup than in most matchups.
So Adam sacrificing both his Secure Tribe Elders, really hoping that there is a Scape shift to let him escape from here. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not even positive that it's good enough. It probably is, but it may be. Actually, yes. I don't know, actually. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, it's going to be real tough. I think that on the following turn, he's going to get Stone Rained again. So if he doesn't win on this turn, he's basically out of it. And I'm not sure if that's really just 5 lands in play for him. But if it is, he's really, really got his work cut out for him.
Yeah.
I don't know quite what he could do here.
I actually think he may already have lost here. If he could stack his deck, it might not be good enough. And hold on. Did he actually draw the Scape shift? I can't tell. It's definitely a green card. So it might... I actually think it might be a Primeval Titan, which, if he has an untapped land, I actually think he has a Valakut in hand, so I think he cannot cast it regardless. And I think even if that was the case, I don't think he'd be able to survive because Julian has another Ulamog in his hand, so can obviously kill whatever blocker.
Yeah, and I mean, if it were a Summoner's Pact... Ooh, so he is playing Omen.
Yeah.
If it were a Summoner's Pact, then Julian could exile Adam's green sources and just win by pacting him to death.
So plays a Prismatic Omen, then plays the Valakut, and now it actually does some amount of damage. But it doesn't matter because Julian attacks for the win, and so moves on to 12-1. Only one more win away for basically a lock for getting a qualification and probably making top 8.
Not a bad weekend.
Yeah. So that's the end of round 13, and so we'll be back right after these messages.